Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Evelyn D. Dominicus, Evelyn D for short. I am a certified nutrition specialist and a life coach, and I am here tonight today to talk about how to indulge without overindulging or obsessing. So it's going to be casual. I do have about 25 slides, but I'm going to kind of cruise through them. I don't have a script or anything like that. Feel free to ask questions if I'm jumping over something that you'd like clarification on in the moment, or we'll have plenty of time for questions and even coaching if you're interested in that at the end, whatever time you need. And when I do questions and coaching, I'll stop recording. So it'll just be us. All right. Okay. So how to indulge without overindulging or obsessing. Let me just, excuse me, just got to move this over. Here we go. Okay. Indulge, to allow oneself to enjoy the pleasure of. That's the formal dictionary definition of indulge. So my approach when I'm working with somebody on either a health goal, weight loss, hormonal balance, healing, gut, whatever it is to work on the healing, but also to make sure that the approach is sustainable. And usually that does involve having some sort of indulgences that work for the individual. So I don't dictate what that indulgence should be. It's really up to the individual and how their body responds to it. But to me, it's an important part of approaching a sustainable approach to nutrition and lifestyle. So to me, it's important. I don't think we can always be like perfect and say no to all the good things in life. Life is short, but there is a balance that I'm going to go through and share some tools about. So what are some of the benefits of indulging? Well, one is we experience pleasure, I hope. We can also kind of have feelings of nostalgia, memories. We can kind of feel familiar. It's kind of like a warm hug sometimes. We can feel connection. So sometimes it's like sharing a dessert with a special friend, or having a glass of wine with your husband outside, or whatever it may be. Sometimes it can help bring people together. It allows us to relax and unwind. However, I can tell you, and I'll share my story about alcohol. I used to get into this habit of relaxing and unwinding with a glass or four of wine, and it got to be a habit. And so we want to talk about indulging with intention versus becoming attached and creating habitual and overindulging that affects our life, which I'll go through that with the costs of indulging. It can help us loosen up. It can ease anxiety. It can cheer us up if we're feeling down. It can give us fun, right? So we can experience more fun or pleasure in the act of indulging. And sometimes we can just have like that sense of freedom, so that, again, back to that sustainable lifestyle, so that we're not just all eating perfectly like salads with chicken on it every day. We're having a little bit of freedom in our lifestyle, just giving us a little bit of that flexibility and flow so that we're not so rigid. What are some of the costs of overindulging? Well, we can have physical symptoms. When I would have those 4 glasses of wine, eventually I would have hormonal imbalances. I couldn't sleep. I would get hot flashes, all kinds of things. And of course, I would gain weight. Poor ability to function the next day, especially if we're talking about alcohol, but this can also overlap into foods as well. If you're eating something that creates inflammation, you might not be able to move or have the energy to do what you want to do the next day. I already mentioned, but you could gain weight or have slow weight loss if you're working on weight management. There's a lot with overindulging, and this was a big one for me, was the mental anguish, right? There's this chatter in our heads about like, oh, why did I do that? Or why did I have so much? So we get into this spiral of almost like anxiety and fighting ourselves, that resistance. In some cases, it can be expensive to overindulge. In other cases, we can embarrass ourselves, especially in the case of alcohol, where if we're overindulging and we say the wrong thing, or we get, kind of sloppy with how we're talking to people or how we're acting. And then we can also, that can all spill over into our relationships and how it affects our work and our life overall. So there's all, just like with everything, there's a benefit and there's a cost, and it's all about finding that balance, that harmony, so that we get the best of both worlds. So this is a common scenario where you make those promises to yourself, like, okay, I'm cutting that out. I'm never going to overdrink again, or I'm never going to overeat this XYZ again. And then we make that promise, let's say Monday morning, and then by Friday, or maybe by 5 o'clock, a few things might happen. We might find that we're on that hamster wheel where we say we're going to do one thing and then we end up doing another. So we say, okay, I'm only going to have 2 drinks, or I'm only going to have 1 little sliver of cake. And then that turns into finishing the leftovers. So we repeat that process over and over. And that's where that mental anguish comes in, because we're beating ourselves up. We think there's something wrong with us, and we just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. Or I've done this too. We restrict. We say, okay, that's it. I'm going to cut this out entirely, or I'm just going to cut it out because I can't trust myself around this substance, whether that be alcohol or food or anything else. And we can do that for a while, but I always use this analogy. It's almost like holding your breath, right? Or holding down a beach ball underwater. Eventually it pops up, or eventually you have to take that out breath. So restriction, it might work in the short term, but it doesn't work long term. And then the boomerang effect of restriction can really do a number on us, because then we make up for that lost time. That's really kind of what dieting's all about. We diet, we restrict, we're being good, and then we boomerang and we make up for it on the other end. Or we go into this last one, and actually I've done all 3. I don't know if anybody else has. We give up. We say, F it, like, forget it. I don't care anymore. Like, I'm just going to do whatever. But then we're left with the cost of overindulging by still having those physical symptoms, gaining weight, not losing weight, the expense, the embarrassment, the mental anguish, all those things are still there. So none of these options are really good. They don't feel good. They don't work. So what should we do instead? All right. So a lot of times, and this is the focus I see everywhere. So it's October 6th, right? Sober October. If you're on the drinking side, if not in the food side, you're probably hearing about all kinds of nutrition challenges, workout challenges, Whole30s, all those things. So we have a focus in our culture around the external. And there's nothing wrong with these external things. I just shared my detox that I did for 2 weeks a few weeks ago, and it really did help me take that little break so that I could do some inner work. But what we're missing when we're focusing on the external planning is we're ignoring the internal work, like what's coming up for us, right? So it's great to set intentions and limits and abstain. It's great to have a plan of like, okay, before I go to this party, I'm going to eat before I go, eat something healthy so that I'm not noshing on all the goodies, right? You can identify worth it choices. You can look at menus if you're going out to eat and be like, okay, what's the healthiest thing I should get? You can make sure that you're balanced overall in your life. Like, okay, did I get a good night's sleep, so that you're making better choices the next day? You could do substitutions. You could bring food to parties that's more kind of in line with your nutrition approach. You could bring your own drinks or mocktails. There's all kinds of things on the external side here, right? But most of us are not doing the inner work. We're not noticing what our brain is doing when we are presented with the urge to indulge and to overindulge. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So it's not like we want to discard all the external planning and stuff and all those tools and all those substitutions and the mocktails. Those are great. But we don't want to do that without prioritizing the internal work, the inner practice. So I'm going to go into that here today. I'm not going to talk much at all about the external plans. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them, but I'm not going to really delve into that because really we need to focus on this internal work. And here's why. This is representing a glacier. So we've got our conscious mind, right? The conscious mind is the mind that we say, I wish I had more willpower. If only I was more disciplined. It's the motivation, right? It's like, where's my motivation? I lost my motivation. Well, the thing with the conscious mind is it's only about 3% of our brain power, right? It's the tip of the iceberg. And it says 3 to 10%, depending on what research you look at. I'm saying 3%. And so really the 90 to 97% is what's running the show. These are your subconscious programs that are running in your brain that have all these neural pathways and connections to habits and behaviors so that the brain can automate the activity, right? And the brain is always, this is kind of neuroscience 101, but the brain, we're hardwired to avoid pain and to seek pleasure. This is our physiology. And we want to do it as efficiently and effortlessly as possible. And this is how habits are formed because they give us pleasure, bad habits. They give us pleasure and they avoid pain in the short term and they're automated. And that's exactly what the subconscious mind is designed to do. So when we think that we can rely on willpower and discipline and motivation to achieve a goal and to change our habits, we're not respecting the massive influence that our subconscious mind has on what we actually end up doing. So we have to work at that subconscious level and integrate the conscious with the subconscious. This is a cute quote that I found. You know, you get really fed up with your subconscious. It's like it's got a mind of its own because it does. It's 97% of, or 90 to 97% of what's running the show. It's kind of like, it's basically we're on autopilot most of the time. So change requires that we replace those old neural pathways. I always describe it as like a superhighway with kind of the bumpy road where we're not used to practicing the new behavior that's more aligned with who we want to be and how we want to live our life and what we want to experience in our bodies. So we have to replace those old superhighway neural pathways and create new ones that are aligned with that state of being that we desire to be. And so this requires that clarity and then that focused awareness, that vigilant awareness and that repetition, which is practice. And practice always means that we fail sometimes, just like when you're riding a bike. You get on the bike, it's not like, okay, I'm just gonna, for the first time, like I'm just gonna master this. You're gonna fall off a little bit. You're gonna be wobbly until you start to get going, right? So you just keep practicing, you fail, you practice, and you just keep going with those new thoughts and behaviors that create those new pathways. And I'm going to show you more specific examples of how we do that. Now, when it comes to like changing I'm going to talk mostly about food and alcohol, but you can actually insert any behavior here. It can be around shopping, it can be around TV or digital consumption, gambling, sex, it can be around overworking, procrastinating, underworking. It can be about anything. But for this talk and training, I'm going to talk mostly about food and alcohol. And the thing that I notice is a lot of people, especially I found this during COVID, a lot of people are focused on, you know, changing the food and the alcohol. Like if I only had a meal plan that was easy or meal prep strategies that I could implement. And, or if only I could drink less, or maybe I need to socialize less, clear my calendar so I don't see anybody. So all those things, and I've done those all. It's not about the things, it's about the desire for those things, right? And those come from your mind. We were born craving alcohol, right? Most of us aren't born craving alcohol. We're not even born craving sweets or cheese or pizza, right? We have no, that's not an intrinsic part of our, you know, who we are when we enter this world, right? This is learned behavior. There's a connection. I'll kind of go through a little flow chart so you can see that as well. So the desire for the thing, whatever it is, food or alcohol or whatever behavior, comes from how we think. So we have an experience with the thing. So I started drinking in high school, right? And what I learned is that when I drink, I feel like I fit in, and it can be a lot of fun. And I don't feel as awkward and anxious around people. I feel more relaxed and like I could let loose, right? So I made that association in high school. And so I have an experience with the thing. Before high school, I never had alcohol. So I had no idea. And you can insert your favorite food there. So a lot of people will say, well, ice cream was something that we used to do after the games or after our dance recitals. And so we have this association. And so we have that experience with the thing, and it doesn't matter what it is. So when we have those experiences, there's a physical and emotional response. So on the physical side, the brain senses pleasure and dopamine is released into the nervous system and the bloodstream. And that's our kind of motivational, our drive neurotransmitter that kind of like, ooh, I want more, like, cool, like I feel good. It makes us want to do things. And then on the emotional side, we have the association. So for me, it was alcohol makes me feel like I'm accepted. It makes me feel more me, right? Didn't really, but I thought it did. I thought it was like, okay, I can fit in if I drink with these people, right? And then, or if you've got the kind of ice cream after the game, it makes me feel like accomplished. It makes me feel connected to my parents. I feel loved. So there's that physical dopamine hit, and then there's the emotional response to it. Then it's reinforced through repetition. So we do it over and over again. For some substances like heroin, you could have one experience with heroin and be addicted. But for most of us, it's been repetitive, right? It's been repeated over and over again. And so there, the neural pathway, that superhighway, is being formed. So that desire connection is set and the habit is formed. And so then we continue living our lives. And then the emotional cue or trigger says, boop, have some alcohol. Here's the social situation so that you can feel like you're accepted and you fit in, even though I'm in my 50s. I don't really care if I fit in or not, right? But that same, kind of teenager is still kind of using that same pathway. That the teenage version of me is still relying on that same pathway. And you could have that same association with foods as well. The comfort foods, things that bring you back to either loved ones maybe that you miss, or experiences that bring you joy, like birthday cake, those kinds of things. So think about that association, and then how that gives you either pleasure or relief, or it helps to bring more fun or relieves boredom, whatever it might be. And then you continue to desire the thing. So we've got this kind of loop going over and over again until we can start doing more of the inner work to intercept it. So when I was changing my relationship with alcohol, I remember, and this is actually, I've been working on this for a while and I'm still working on it, believe it or not. But I would always say, I just wish I could be that person that could take it or leave it, right? What I didn't realize is that if I truly want that, that means that I'm indifferent about it, and that I'm completely neutral, and that I don't desire it, and that I'm okay with not having it. And I didn't realize until very recently that I wasn't ready to do that until now. And so it's like in the past, month, I've been like really working on that level of indifference, and like realizing, and I'll kind of share my story a little bit more in depth as we go, but just suffice it to say, when you say you want to be able to take it or leave it, like with the birthday cake or the desserts at restaurants or the bread basket or whatever it might be, or snacking, whatever your, kind of vice is, what you mean is that you're okay with not desiring that thing. And that's something with that really just clicked with me. And it's like, oh, I wasn't willing to desire it because I had a lot of identity wrapped up in hey, Ev likes to have her wine, right? People know me for that. And, there's some people that I've worked with that are sommeliers, right? And they work with wine. And it's like their identity is very much wrapped up in alcohol in that example, or food if they work for a restaurant. So it's really understanding this connection, that take it or leave it, meaning like, which basically helps you to not overindulge, does involve that disconnection, that indifference about the substance. So the question that you have to ask yourself, and I've been asking myself, is, am I willing to change my attachment to that desire? And if the answer is no, that's okay. And it's just, that's why you might be overindulging in it. But if the answer is yes, then keep going, because there's more work to do. And there could be many things. It might not just be one thing. You might have a whole, kind of inventory of things you want to have a better relationship with. So you can start small. And I'll talk about how to start and how to kind of continue with this practice. So, and a big thing too to consider is when you do decide that you're willing to change your desire, right? And to let go of your desire for the thing, what are you going to fill your life with instead? Right? So if I'll just keep using the alcohol example because it's one that's near to my heart. So if I am not filling my life with alcohol, and alcohol is not playing a role in how I'm living my life and how I'm experiencing pleasure and acceptance, what is, right? And so maybe for me, what's taking that place is my true connection with people, my true connection with myself, my true connection with nature, with my kind of connection with God and all these other things, my family and friends. So what will you fill your life instead? And so that's the kind of deep question that we need to like kind of look at, because if we just say, okay, I'm going to let go of that desire. Well, what was that desire? What was in it for us? What was that giving us? And how do we cultivate that in other ways that are more aligned with who we want to be? And then the lower part of this here is, are you willing to experience the discomfort that comes from not saying yes to the urge? Because the urge will still come up. It might lessen over time, but it's still going to come up. And when it does, are you willing to sit with that discomfort? Because it will be uncomfortable, but you're not going to die. I'll tell you that. You won't die. But it will feel yuck at first. And it's kind of like, you don't want to run away from it or resist it, but you want to be, okay, I can handle it. I've handled a lot of the hard things in my life. I can handle this as well, right? So kind of shifting into that more confident position and kind of that like decision of like, yeah, I'm doing this. So, that's kind of what I work on with clients and in my groups too. So here's just the kind of the simple plan. And this is a little bit of external and internal. So what do you actually want? We call it goals, but what do you really want and why? Why is it important? How will your life change? So a lot of clients come to me, a lot of women come to me saying, I just want to feel better. I want to improve my energy. I want to have a better relationship with food or alcohol, and I want to lose weight. A lot of people want to lose weight, but I do have a few people, but about 99% want to lose weight. I have a small percentage that want to gain weight, but most want to lose weight. And then really understanding, get very clear. So it's not just, I want to lose 20 pounds. It's more about, who do you want to become? What is your relationship? What do you want your relationship to be with yourself, with others, with your work, with life, but also with the substances that have gotten you off balance? And for some people, it's not even a substance. It could be they're overworking. It could be they're not in a good relationship. They're overwhelmed. So sometimes it's really not about the food or alcohol at all, but really getting very clear on what it is you actually want and why. And going deep into that, you've got to spend some time there. It's not just like the number on the scale. And then you set up the sustainable plan, but that's a combination of the external. Okay, so like, this is what I'm going to eat, and this is kind of what I'm planning on for drinking and indulging. But the bigger focus in terms of your plan needs to be on how am I going to manage my mind? How am I going to deal with the resistance when I am bumping up into those urges and cravings, when I'm feeling like I'm failing and I'm not doing it right and I want to give up, when I'm feeling like this isn't working, I need to jump around and find a better, coach or nutritionist or solution or meal plan. Because the brain will want to do that. The brain will come up with reasons why it's not working. It's kind of like this little devil on our shoulder, right? You got your higher self, so to speak, that prefrontal cortex that has this vision, that knows that, you have so much potential. And then you've got this habit brain that doesn't want you to change. It's that lower level brain that just is looking for survival, avoid pain, seek pleasure, and don't change, right? So we're kind of at odds with those two parts of ourselves, and they are parts of ourselves that we need to love, understand, but we also need to manage that. We want that prefrontal cortex to be running the show and kind of working with the subconscious versus this kind of lower brain that's like, it's not working, blah, 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 you suck, those kinds of things. So the thought work needs to be part of the plan. And then you apply and you practice and you practice and you practice, and you be okay with failing and be curious about it. Like if you screw up, it's not like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? It's like, okay, what was going on? I had a situation over the summer where I overdrank, and I made a commitment to myself to understand, I was with my friends having a good time, my husband, and I was like, so, all right, next time I'm in that situation, even if I am over drinking, I am going to do some inner work. And I did. And we were playing cards. We were having a great time. We were away at the beach. And I realized I just checked in with myself, and I was like, so what's coming up? What am I feeling? And I realized I was feeling bored. And now it's not because my friends are boring. They're not. We were having a good old time. But there was a thought in my brain, a feeling of boredom. And the thought was, more alcohol will make this more fun, right? This is an old program from high school that I still have to work with because it's still kicking up there. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not hating that part of me, it's just understanding and seeing beyond, untangling, teasing out all these old thoughts and old patterns and old beliefs that really aren't serving us and that are separating us from who we want to become. And then finally, you have to keep going. You have to keep going. The only time you fail is when you quit, right? So if you just say, oh, screw it, like, I just can't do this, it's too hard. And you say, like before, you say, F it, or you start looking for another plan, then you're quitting, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. But if you can, just stick with it. Keep doing that inner work. Keep asking the harder questions versus looking outside of yourself. All right. So a lot of my work is mindful moderation. So it's not just moderation like, oh, drink, 4 glasses of wine a week. It's not about counting numbers or the days of the week, although that's part of the external plan. It's about moderation, but with a mindfulness around why you want the thing to begin with. So moderation is defined as the avoidance of excess or extremes, especially in one's behavior. So again, my approach here when I'm working with clients and in my group membership that I'm going to talk about at the end, it's not about counting the things, but you can count the things if that helps you. Like, okay, I'm going to have desserts twice a week, or whatever it is. And it's going to be a shared portion or what have you. And then you kind of have that accountability. You check in with your results. Is it working for me? Is it not? And then you move on. You tweak if it's not working for you, and you keep going if it is. That's it. So you've got that, externally. You can cut your portions, make sure you're eating in balance, limit the amount of days of the week you're drinking, limit the amount you're drinking, substituting things like mocktails and bring baby carrots and all those things. You can do all those external things, but that's not the real work. The internal focus is about developing those skills so that you moderate your mind. You gotta go into those thoughts and moderate at that level as well, because your thoughts create your feelings drive your actions, and your actions deliver your results. And that's kind of the basic thought model that I talk about all the time, but that's how it works. And so if we're ignoring what's going on in our brain and we're allowing those subconscious autopilot thoughts to just keep running the show, that's why we're going to feel like we're on this hamster wheel all the time and nothing's working. And we think like there is something wrong with us. So we have to do the moderation at that thought and belief level, right? So, and it's a practice, right? So we want to start strengthening that connection with the internal dialogue and the triggers and the cues that lead us to those urges and those desires to overconsume. So indulging moderately is a learned skill. We're not taught this. You know, it's not like you go to school or even with our parents, like we're just taught like, oh, no, don't have dessert before dinner. We're not really taught anything about how to manage our minds. So it's a skill that you need to learn. You might not even be aware of it until today, maybe not. And then it does require practice, just like anything, just like when you learn, like over here with a little baby, like learning to walk, or when you ride a bike or learn the piano. We need to apply those same kind of skills when we are managing our relationships with food and alcohol, or working on any other behavior that we want to improve or work on. And just knowing, like I said before, with the bike example, we're gonna fall, you know, this baby's gonna fall probably 1,000 times before he or she masters walking. And that's just part of it. The baby's not like, oh, screw it, I'll never walk. You know, the baby's not giving up. The baby keeps trying. And we have to do that too. Kind of harkens back to that last slide as well. So building up, I've already kind of shared along the way my story with alcohol, but more recently, like I was sharing my examining over the summer, my relationship with alcohol. And I caught myself doing like, all right, I'm going to do intermittent fasting because we were at the beach like every other weekend. And there's alcohol every other weekend, of course. And then in between when we were home, it's like, oh, because then when you get into that habit cycle. So I was really committed to analyzing that relationship and like understanding both outer and inner. And I caught myself doing more of the outer because it's easier. I'll be honest, it's way easier to give yourself a bunch of rules than it is to examine what's going on in your brain and what's going on with you and your life and how you're not showing up. That's a hard pill to swallow. You know, and I have my own set of coaches and support and friends and family that help me, but it's a hard thing to stick with. But you know, it's kind of like you keep going. So one thing that I noticed, and this was like a total game changer so far, knock on wood, is before over here on the left side, I'd have my thoughts that would amplify my desire, right? So a lot of it was triggered, or the cues would be, it's 5 o'clock. Like the old me would be like when we're done here, oh, that was great. I did a good job. You know, I love that I've shared this information. Let me pour a glass of wine, right? So there would be that cue of like, job well done, celebrate. It could be like Friday. Okay, cool, it's Friday. It could be, oh, we're going to my favorite restaurant with my favorite martinis. It could be like, oh my gosh, what a hard day. Like I had such a stressful day. I need to have a drink. I deserve a drink. A lot of times for me, it'll be food. Oh, I've got this grass-fed steak from the farm. A nice Cabernet would be wonderful with that. Or it's Taco Tuesday, margaritas, right? So there's all these associations. With food, you know, you might be like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Let's just order pizza. Or it might be like, let's go to my favorite restaurant. I love the lobster mac and cheese. So it's not unique to alcohol, not unique to food, but it's just understanding these behaviors, these thoughts, and these associations that amplify the desire, right? So you get into that like, ooh, and then I would go down here like, oh, I'm only going to have 2 glasses. I'm only going to have half the bottle, 2.5 glasses. I'll just have half now, and then I'll have Friday, half Saturday, and then I won't drink Sunday. So I would have all these rules around that, right? To just try and moderate. And a lot of times I would be successful, but a lot of times I wouldn't. And I'm kind of like, okay, why am I not successful all the time? And it's not about perfection. It's about, what's up with that? So here's how, and I'll share the most powerful thought that my brain came up with. It's the reframed thoughts. And it is, and I'm using this all the time, I can enjoy this experience without a drink. I can enjoy this experience without a drink. I can enjoy the connection with my husband, connection with my friends, connection with my family without alcohol. I was at a service with like a gathering after. It was a memorial service. So there was a lot of people I haven't seen in years, a lot of people I didn't know, which is definitely like, cool, open bar, I'm there. But it was also like 12:30. So I'm like, I wanted to do a lot of things. And it's not like I could have chosen to drink, but I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to drink there. I don't care if it's free. And sure enough, there was one of my friends was there, and she was like, oh, what are we getting at the bar? And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get a club soda with lime. And she goes, you gotta be kidding me. Come on, it's open bar. Come on, it's Friday. And I was like, no, I'm good. So not only did I have the discomfort of being around people I haven't seen in a while, and a lot of people I didn't know, kind of an awkward, gathering, I had peer pressure right in my face, right? And so with this friend, and it was such a wonderful practice for me because I can enjoy this experience without a drink. I can experience any emotions, discomfort, peer pressure, anxiety without alcohol, or you insert, yours too, if it's food. Another thought that does make me excited is I'm excited about changing this habit and my attachments to alcohol. It's been, if I started when I was a teenager, let's say if I was 14, 15, I'm going to be 54. This is 4 decades of drinking other than when I was pregnant. So it's like this, I'm really excited to actually kind of really get this now, finally. Back to the peer pressure. He or she doesn't care if I drink or not. In this case, this friend did kind of care. She was just egging me on. But even if she did, and it got her like bent out of shape, that's not my problem. It's not my responsibility. That's hers. So it's really having that freedom and that autonomy of like, okay, I can choose, right? And now I'm not giving up drinking, by the way. I'm going to drink. I'm not like abstaining for the rest of my life by any means, but I can choose it anytime I want, and I can choose not to. And I'm finding, and it's only been a month, but what I'm finding is I don't want it as much as I thought I did. That detachment has happened so far, and I am knocking on wood because, that subconscious brain, that pattern that's like almost 40 years old, I'm sure it's going to rear its head, beautiful head, right? It's going to come back up, but I'm aware, I'm committed, I'm excited. So when you think about your attachments, take a screenshot of this, or when you get the replay, you can jot the stuff down, but think about ways that you can shift the thoughts that you have associated with the things that you're craving now, your urges and cravings and your desires, and shift into ways that you can reframe that relationship into a neutral, at least neutral, indifference about it. So it's diffusing the power it has over you. And it doesn't mean you can't have it and you're restricting. it's reframing it. It's a subtle difference, but it's very important distinction, because once you get into restriction, you're into the like, oh, I can't have it and I want it more when I can. When you're in this place, you're in that zone of alignment. And that's where I'm feeling so far. And, I'm sharing along the way, so we'll see how it goes. But so far, so good. And it's feeling very powerful, feeling much different than anything I've ever done before. Now, I've mastered my relationship with food for a long time. So food's not my issue. It really hasn't been, but it used to be. I'm about 99% like on point with my food. I eat what works for my body. I'll have dessert every once in a while, but I can take it or leave it. I'm not like craving or having urges for food. Maybe once in a while, potato chips, but not often, not often. So for some reason though, that bridge over to alcohol took me a lot longer. So the food part is the easy part for me, but I can help you through that. But the alcohol part is brand new for me. So I just want to be full disclosure about that. I'm not like perfect by any means. So wrapping up, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we want to be mindful, aligned, and curious, right? Shifting away from restriction, rigidity, and obsessiveness. It's just a complete different approach than what our culture is steeped in. Especially with these sober Octobers, the focus is on, oh, how bad alcohol is for you. Or like if it's a Whole30, oh, how bad sugar is and grains, how they mess up your gut and your immune system, right? So we're trying to convince ourselves that like, oh, we're not as healthy if we have these things, but that's not going to override that need for pleasure and that avoiding pain and discomfort part of our brain that doesn't want you to change. So you can do those eliminations. There's nothing wrong with them. They can be a great reset. You can make some connections, but to do it based upon, well, because it's bad for you is not really an effective strategy long-term, because your brain, that part of your brain will still want to seek pleasure and avoid pain and discomfort. So that's an important thing to distinguish when you're embarking on an elimination. So like when I did that paleo cleanse that I shared in that email a couple of weeks ago, my intention, like I didn't cut out dairy or coffee or anything like that. My intention was alcohol and doing the inner work, because I had these tools that I learned from my coaching. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to apply this. And that's where I'm coming from. Oh, one warning before I jump into questions. If you've been in this self-improvement space for a while, like me, watch out for the tendency to bypass, right? To come up with the right answer because you know it. You know the right answer. Be mindful. Oh, I'm just using awareness. All those things, you can come up with that right answer, but that can prop up the habit. It's because you're kind of bypassing your own inner work, because you're jumping to the solution without doing the inner work. I've done that. So just making sure, like, okay, you might be very well versed in intuitive eating, in, abstinence, in moderation, in mindfulness and mindful eating. That's great. But just because we know how it should be doesn't mean we've done our own inner work and really looked at our own patterns. So be wary of that. There's so much information out there, and it's great information, but it's a tendency of us. The more we know, the more we can kind of like skirt past our own deeper work. So just wanted to throw that warning out. If you're looking for support, I am doing a test of a group, right? So weekly coaching, I'll kind of go through what's included. It's an intro. I don't know, I'm going to take it month by month, but I'm kind of sensing, I get a lot of calls from people. I don't take insurance for one-on-one, and it's not cheap. And so it's a way to support people that want to have this sort of approach to like sustainable nutrition, but also reach their goals, also doing this inner work. and in an affordable way. So I'm locking, whoever kind of joins this year or like this month or whatever, I'm locking it in at $47 a month for as long as you're a member. You can cancel anytime. And I'll kind of go through what it includes. So we're going to have weekly group coaching calls, just like this with Zoom. At times, mostly I'll have like a little bit of a topic that we'll cover, probably worksheets at times as well. Or if there's just people that want coaching, we'll jump to that as well, whatever the group needs. I have a feeling the group's going to be kind of small because I'm also like not doing full on marketing like I was. I'm kind of just like throwing things out there, see if they stick. And if they don't, fine, I'll move on, figure something else out. So we've got the weekly group coaching via Zoom. We have a private community area. It's not Facebook. So it's a area just for us. It's a private portal. There's an app that you can use so you can easily post and share. You can upload pictures, videos, ask questions, and I'll be monitoring that every day, basically. I've got some new resources in there. A lot of the things that I'm working with now will be converted into worksheets, into new tools, things that you can use to help you kind of prompt some of this deeper inner work, to kind of really get under that subconscious and change those patterns. So there'll be things like that. I'm going to be doing some more meditations. There's meditations as well. There's recipes. There's my standard meal plans as well. Those kinds of things will be in there too. My framework, my real food framework, all the nutrition stuff will be there. And I am throwing in, and I sold it for $97 last year, and it's really good. I just went through it. I'm like, this was really good. It's a holiday mastery, and it has some aspects of mindset, nutrition as well to kind of get through the holidays. So that alone is kind of worth it. Just even if you decide to drop it after the first month, you'll get that, you'll have all that. And then, you can be on your way if it's not working out for you. So, yeah, so that's what I'm offering. It's $47 a month. It will be going up, but whoever locks in this month is going to be locked in for life as long as you're a member. And if you wanted to cancel, you can cancel anytime. And you can also pause your membership for a month, or, once a month, once a year for a month, if you ever, something going on, traveling or something like that. So, and still lock in your rate. So anyway, let me open it up for questions. I'll stop sharing. And I will also stop recording.